Renovating a property can be a great way to create value and drive capital growth. But it's not as simple as many people think. Now, in today's market, where property values aren't expected to grow strongly for some time, many investors are turning to renovation as a way of manufacturing capital growth. Now, I think it's a great idea, but there are also a lot of pitfalls that investors need to be aware of before jumping in. And that's what I'm going to be discussing in today's show with Greg Hankinson, Director of Metropole Constructions, and a veteran builder who's undertaken hundreds and hundreds of renovation projects. Now, long before I got into property development, I cut my teeth on renovations, and I'm still actively involved in renovating properties in our portfolio. So I'm looking forward to having this chat with Greg and sharing some of my experiences too. So welcome to today's show.
Welcome to the Michael Yardney podcast, where twice each week you will learn a number of new ideas regarding success, property investment and money in around 30 minutes. Our show is brought to you by Metropole, who specialise in helping you grow, protect and pass on your wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. Now here's your host, Michael Yardney, Australia's authority in wealth creation through property, who has been voted one of Australia's top 50 most influential thought leaders.
Last year, The Block once again was a hugely popular TV show, and not surprisingly, each year it encourages a whole new generation of property investors to turn their hand at renovation. Well, look, the last year's show didn't work as well, but people get excited about all that. But if you ran The Block as a real business, and if you added stamp duty and buying and selling costs, interest for the holding period, real payments for the labour, there was no commercial profit in doing those renovations. Now, don't get me wrong, I think renovations are a great strategy, particularly in our current flat property market. It's a great way to increase the value of your property, make them more appealing to tenants, increase rents, and manufacture depreciation allowances. But my strategy, rather than buying, renovating and flipping it, is to buy, renovate, refinance and hold the properties for the long term. And I've got a substantial portfolio, but I'm still doing that regularly, making sure my properties are used to their maximum and most appealing to tenants. But it's just too hard to do it any other way to make money out of buy, renovate and sell. So to discuss how to profit from renovations, I'm joined by Greg Hankinson, a registered builder and director of Metropole Constructions and a veteran of hundreds of successful property renovation and, in fact, development projects. Hi, Greg.
Hi, Michael. How are you going?
Good, thank you. Now, again, we're business partners and we speak all the time, and I know that you in particular are involved more in the construction of large townhouse developments for our clients and for other people as well. And that's an area that you specialise in for a long time. But Metropole has also been involved in hundreds of renovations over the years. So I think it's really important to give some direction to people who are considering doing it at the moment, because it's not as simple as the various TV shows or some of the podcasts or blogs make out, is it?
It's your comments about The Block were absolutely valid. It's a great TV show, but not a good advertisement for effective property renovation and property investment.
So I guess people are doing it because they have fun, and on TikTok and on Instagram, people are talking about how to renovate and how much fun it is. But maybe you've got to go back right from the beginning and understand, well, why are you actually doing it?
There's a couple of really key points when considering investing in property, and the why is absolutely critical. It should be the first question you ask. Is it to add value to the property, to an investment property or property portfolio? Is it to bring your principal place of residence up to a particular living standard? You've got to have a really clear understanding of what the purpose is and what you want to get out of it before you commit to it.
I think the other thing you've really got to be honest about is your abilities, and not just physical abilities of being able to do things. And, I don't even have any power tools in my home. I can't do it. But also, have you actually got the knowledge? It's not really as simple as what it shows on the TV shows or on TikTok.
Yeah, absolutely right. And unfortunately, it's one of the misconceptions that come out of shows like The Block. It looks really easy. It looks glamorous. People get caught up in the fancy colours and the new latest technology, and it makes it look very, very simple.
Well, In fact, even in the block this year, people walked away without any money and had spent a lot of time. So I guess the question is, how much time have you got? How much cash have you got? Have you got the right people? Have you got finance in place? Who's going to pay for the renovations and how it's going to happen? Now, let's just go back to a comment I made a bit earlier on, that our renovation strategy, yours personally as an investor, mine, and what we recommend to our clients, is what I call the brewer strategy: buy, renovate, refinance, and redo it. Do it all over again, hold for the long term. Because flipping properties, while it sounds sexy and exciting, doesn't really work, because you've really got to manufacture significant capital growth, and that's hard to do, Greg.
When I first started building, that was my strategy, to buy, either renovate or develop and flip. And it worked and you'll remember this, Michael, in the middle 90s, we rode the property boom, and it worked really well. But those days are a long way behind us, and it doesn't work anymore.
In fact, I did that in the 80s, and I thought I was really smart. In fact, I think I was carried away by a property boom. And if I didn't do anything and just held on to the property and it went up so much, just like it did a couple of years ago in Australia, people get a false sense of how smart they are with this.
Yeah, that's right. And I was exactly the same. And knowing what I know now, I could have done half the amount of building work and been in a better financial position if I had have held instead of selling.
Sure. So again, there's the large transaction costs, the holding costs, tax, and even if you're doing it for the principal place of residence because you think you're going to get away with not paying the capital gains tax on it, there are just too many costs involved, and the upside isn't as great at the moment. So let's maybe have a talk about the renovation process. One of the things I think you've got to work out is what you can do and what you should be outsourcing.
I think it comes down to time as well, Michael.
Yeah.
If you've got time to invest and you've got the skills and the resources at hand to pull off an effective renovation, then sure, by all means, go ahead and do that. But if you're limited in time, if it's not your core business and not your strength and you haven't got those resources, maybe it's worth considering outsourcing that and paying maybe a premium for a professional to undertake that. In the long run, I'd suggest it would probably be cheaper for you.
I think you're right there, because the cost of getting it wrong is even more expensive. Now, some people are going to say, oh, but Greg's got a vested interest. He's a builder. He's looking for some business. Well, yes, we are. But having said that, I think we got enough. We're always open for business. But boy, every builder at the moment's got more business than they can poke a stick at.
Oh, there's a lot of work around, and there's more than I've ever seen in the almost 25 years of building.
So I still believe, I agree with you, that it's actually best to get smarter people than you're doing it. You spend your time, your effort doing what you're good at doing. But let's maybe look at some of the mistakes people make when renovating properties. What are the common ones you see investors having made?
One of the first mistakes that people make is choosing the wrong location to buy in. They're buying the wrong sort of property to renovate. It's really difficult to come back from that or to add value in an effective way when you start with a poor base.
I think that's a really good point, because people will often go to cheaper areas, some in regional locations. And while regional locations did okay when people were moving out of the CBD during COVID, it's really hard to add significant value in these lower end suburbs where there's a price cap. You can't, if you add $50,000, $100,000 of work to the property, it doesn't mean you're necessarily going to add that much value, while in the more affluent areas where people have got more money and where others are renovating and gentrifying the area, you put money in and you often can get a little bit more back than you put in.
You've also got to look at who the end user is and what the market is that you're either going to lease to, or if you're selling the property, if that's the strategy that you go down. You've got to tailor the renovation or the refurbishment for the end user. Otherwise, you risk overcapitalizing, not getting a value return on your dollars. And at the end of the day, renovating investment properties particularly, it's all about the return on your investment.
Okay, so location is critical because you can't change that. I guess the next one would probably be, Greg, not choosing the right property to do the work on.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, some properties require a significant amount of structural works, which increase costs. There's obviously holding costs. It's a longer time. You need permits and fees. You need designs prepared. There's a whole lot of contributing factors that come with buying the wrong property to add value to.
Sure. So if you're looking at cosmetic renovations, the property's probably got to be, I don't know, at least 20 years old to add significant value. Just doing a lick of paint and putting new carpets, I'd put that in the category of refurbishment, and that doesn't really add as much value. And if you're looking at doing structural work, maybe adding an ensuite or adding living areas at the back, the property's probably got to be 50 years or so old, and you're now then going to want to, if you're going to do all that extra expense, and as you said, permits and taking more time, the property's got to have good bones to start with, but it's got to be old enough to, if you're going to spend all that money, to bring it up to date and the way people live today.
Sure. There's a big difference between renovating and refurbishing as well. So a refurbishment may not bring the same sort of returns that a renovation would bring, but sometimes it's required for properties just a little bit tired, then a refurbishment would be appropriate. But you generally don't get the same sort of capital return that you would on a renovation.
Having said that, I know your team does a lot of refurbishments for clients of Metropole, and we'd be more than happy for anyone listening to this in Melbourne to contact you about doing it, because it actually keeps your property up to date. Even at the moment, when almost anything can be leased very, very quickly, I still think it's best to bring the best product on the market, because you have an even wider selection of tenants, and you can really at the moment charge a premium rent, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you do the same as I do, Michael, and every 5 to 7 years, we're replacing carpets and blinds, and we're repainting and keeping the properties in a premium condition. Kitchens and bathrooms have a longer lifespan than some of those cosmetic items.
Sure. Okay. What other mistakes are you seeing people make?
Overcapitalizing. Putting too much money, putting too high a spec items in their property. It comes down to the end user, and putting appropriate costs and materials and finishes and selections into the investment property to suit that end user.
Look, I guess it's really easy to find a property that needs renovation, but it's not that easy to actually find one where there's a profit at the end of the job, is there?
No. I mean, it's the most difficult. That's where due diligence comes in, when you've really got to do your homework before you commit to a renovation.
So you work backwards, I guess. What you do is you see, well, if I do the renovation, if I do this work, what's it going to be worth? And then you subtract, if you're buying the property, if it's not one that you currently own, you subtract the purchase cost or the associated cost with buying it, the interest, and leave a buffer and make sure that you have money left over for a profit. I think one of the big mistakes people make, Greg, is they don't allow a significant contingency amount. And boy, in today's market, that's even more important than ever.
So we're seeing construction costs escalating over the last 2 years at 30%, 35%. If you didn't have enough of a contingency in your budget for renovations or development, all of that cost and more would have been chewed up, and you would have walked away with no profit whatsoever. So you're absolutely right, Michael. Contingency is paramount.
And if it's structural work as opposed to just a renovation, you really need to put a bigger buffer aside. And despite how easy it looks, we keep going back to those TV shows, tradespeople in general tend to be unreliable. And I know that you're continuously pulling your hair out, because at the moment they're even more unreliable. Deadlines keep slipping through your fingers. Plans keep having to change. And then if one tradesperson doesn't turn up because currently there's a shortage, whether other things upset them, it actually has a domino effect, doesn't it? It messes up the whole timeline. Yeah,
it really does. And I mean, it's a constant battle for all builders at the moment. There's a huge amount of building work on. There's a shortage of skilled trades. When one trade lets us down or delays a project by a day or two, the flow-on effect becomes so much greater. But when we talk about contingency as well, we also need to consider our experience level. The more experience you have, maybe the less contingency or buffer you should allow in your budget.
That makes
If you've
sense.
done the renovations work or construction work before, maybe you can reduce that buffer a little bit.
Sure, people get caught with all sorts of things they didn't know about, such as asbestos or other invisible costs, things that they don't know to even look out for. I think one of the other things they sometimes don't know what to look out for is what actually needs permits and what doesn't, what needs permissions. What hint would you give to people about those factors?
It's a really good reason why any renovation work, whether it's structural work or not, you should engage a professional to assist you with. At the end of the day, a lot of our work is non-structural work. We still provide warranty insurances and all of those requirements with the work that we do. Construction work that is structural really requires permits. If it requires a permit approval process, it requires plans, designs to be drawn up. So you need to engage an architect. If you engage an architect, you've got to engage a structural engineer. Then you may need soil reports done, and so on and so on. This can cause significant costs that if you haven't allowed for is going to break the budget, or you may not get a return. It may mean that your renovation is not feasible.
Now, we're talking at the moment, I guess, about council permits, but a lot of people renovate their apartments and all of a sudden you're dealing with the owner's corporation. And you'd think they'd appreciate, they'd be happy for you to improve the building because it's going to improve the value of other people's properties as well. But boy, I know you've had some challenges with owners' corporations over the years.
All the owners' corps have different requirements in terms of approval or advance notice of building works. So it's one of the things that I hear people get caught out on quite often, not getting the approval of owners' corporations.
Well, we've had trouble with people wanting to put air conditioners in. Nowadays, an air conditioner is, I think, as important as a stove or an oven. Nowadays, people expect that. And a lot of the older apartments didn't have those. So where do you put the outside units? Because we put split system units in. Hey, it's my balcony. I should be able to put it in the balcony. Can I do that, Greg?
Doesn't always work that way, unfortunately. I think owners' corporations are coming around to that now. They're much more open because there's requirements under the Residential Tenancies Act that you've got to be able to heat and cool your properties effectively. But it's still a challenge. They've still got old rules in place that limit the ability to put a split system, for example, on the external fabric of the building. It's old stuff, but it's still there and it's still an approval. And if you're not aware of it, can catch you out, which can cost you money.
I think one of the other things that people get wrong is they have fun or they want to have fun doing the renovation. So they do it how they want to live or where they like they do. I'm not talking about your home. That's a very different matter. But if you're talking about investments, you've really got to tailor your renovation to the target demographic of tenants, not how you'd want to live. It's not a statement like they make on, sorry to mention it again, the block.
It's absolutely right. We need to run your property investment and your renovation business as a business. We're not trying to make the cover of Bell magazine and do all this nice, sexy renovation stuff. It's not a reflection of your personality. It's there to make money. It has a very specific purpose and it needs to make a return.
So spending money on certain items is going to give you better bang for bucks than others. And I think if you're talking about for tenancies, you're wanting to create a good first impression.
First impressions are key. Kitchens and bathrooms sell properties or lease properties. So that's where you want to focus most of your intention. But it's the first impressions as well. It's a nice coat of paint. It's the door handles and light fittings, nice blinds and nice floor finishes. They're the critical things.
And they're not the expensive things. That's not enough. If you do, maybe that's another mistake people make, that they don't have a big enough budget and they only do the kitchen and not the bathroom, or they do bits of it and then leave you with an old kitchen or bathroom. That's a waste, isn't it?
It really is, because you don't get the return on it. So our advice, majority of the time, would be, if you can't afford to do the bathroom with the kitchen, defer both until you can afford to do the whole lot and get the most value for it. And maybe a refurbishment is appropriate in the short term, and then you can revisit that down the track to get the most value.
And look, over the long term, I know we've stuck to probably the same couple of paint colours, changed a slight tinge or tone a little bit over the years. We have actually changed the carpets that we're using, the colours to make them more modern. But in general, they're still neutral colours that allow the tenants or I don't know, occupiers in the future to create their own identity with their own belongings rather than having dominant, strong colours that may initially strike you as impressive when you walk in, but then when you haven't got the right colour furniture, it creates challenges.
Yeah, neutral finishes are always best. The tenants can enhance that with their own furnishings and colourful pillows and bedspreads and all the rest of it. You want neutral. You want to attract the largest group of potential tenants as you can.
That makes sense. Have a wide appeal. So what would you say to people who say, look, I'll actually do part of the work myself. Let me do a bit of the do-it-yourself and then I'll get other people to do the rest?
Often we have clients come back to us and say, we sort of let you do the whole lot. It actually didn't work for us. It took us longer. We didn't have the skills. We didn't have the resources. We didn't really know what we were doing. And it ends up costing them more money and it takes them longer. They don't get the desired result.
They're doing it for fun, I guess, in some ways, Greg, aren't they? They're not valuing their time.
Absolutely.
If you want to have fun, go bungee jumping, go trail bike riding. Let somebody else do this.
Yeah. Builders work on a margin of cost typically, and on a renovation like this, that cost isn't that significant. You build that into your budget.
Mm-hmm.
It's a known factor. You know where you're going to end up at the end of the day. Then you can focus on the things that you do well.
Sure, that makes sense. I guess what we're saying in some ways is remove the emotion. It should really be run like a business.
It's difficult to do when it's your investment property. You've worked hard to buy it. It's really difficult to do. But if you can remove the emotion and run it like a business and run it commercially with a focus on your why. So if we go right back to the start and say, what's the purpose of doing this? Then it's a little easier to remove the emotion from it.
Sure. I think it is, just following on from what we're saying, it is important to get a good team of people around you because if it's renovations, you actually have to coordinate a whole group of tradespeople. And in the current market, it's hard enough to find tradespeople to come and work for builders like ourselves who have continuing ongoing work. So to get somebody to come along and work for you as a one-off, boy, that's hard. And if they let you down, as we said before, there's just a flow-on effect of letting other trades down.
Exactly right. We've made all the mistakes. We've made them before. So you don't need to make them. If you engage a professional that does this for a living and does it well, they've made all the mistakes, which will allow you to get the best returns on your dollars.
One of the other mistakes I see people make is being stingy. Thrifty is good, but cheap is bad, Greg.
We need to be more and more conscious of the dollars that we're spending. But you got to remember, these are long-term holds. So we're not looking for just a quick flip and getting the cheapest products in there and having it look nice for a sale. We're looking for a long-term hold. So products and materials that are going to last the test of time. We don't want to have to replace the timber flooring, for example, every 3 or 4 years because it's a laminate. It was $12 a meter and it's going to wear out and not perform effectively. Sometimes it's best to spend a little bit more, have a really good quality product that's going to last the test of time.
I guess, Greg, in summary then, we believe that renovating properties, bringing them up to market conditions, manufacturing capital growth, getting higher rents, getting better depreciation is a great way to do things, but you get the good team of people around you. So if people want to get you and your team to look at their properties with regard to renovation, I'm going to leave a link in the show notes and just go to Metropole website and look at the construction sub-pages where you can see about Greg. But Greg, apart from renovation, I know that the bulk of your time is actually in constructing townhouses, and Metropole Constructions has a particular area of expertise. Maybe you could just quickly tell us about that.
Sure. So a big part of our business is still in the investment market, but we do a lot of construction of townhouse developments in particular, smaller boutique developments through Melbourne, through the southeastern suburbs of Melbourne, and a small number of luxury homes and new builds. It's a big part of our business, a growing part of our business, and something that we think that we do quite well, and the feedback we get from our clients is very positive as well. So more than happy to look at any of those sort of projects and see whether we can be of any assistance also.
Well, when you use Greg's team at Metropole Constructions, you're actually going to have the security of working with a builder that's specialising in assisting property developers. We know how to work with investors. We know how to maximise their returns. And the key to the success is understanding the blend of what works well financially as well as what the marketplace wants. And at the moment, when a lot of builders are going bust, going broke, it's really important, even if it's for a renovation, to have somebody with a strong track record and who's insured. So we help a lot of first-time developers. We work with, a lot of repeat clients, don't we? Some who are seasoned pros, but they just realise, no, I'm actually going to use somebody who specialises in this. I know that we actually looked at it, and 56% of our business comes from clients who've worked with us before or referrals. So I'm really proud of that reputation you've built, Greg.
Thanks, Michael. I think one of the things we do differently, our point of difference, is that we focus on the returns at the end of the day, whether it's a new build of a townhouse development or a new home or a renovation or refurbishment. It's always about the return on the dollars spent.
Sure. So Metropole Constructions, and I'll leave a link in the show notes. And the world has changed. The market is going to pick up in 2023, but it's not going to be a strong growth market, the high capital growth. So this is the stage of the cycle that adding value through renovations or development makes sense, but don't try and do it on your own. Thanks for your time, Greg.
Thanks, Michael.
I hope you got some benefit from my chat with Greg Hankinson, who's my business partner in Metropole Constructions. And while we undertake a lot of renovations for clients and for myself, we also get involved in townhouse developments for our clients and for other investors as well. Now, if you got benefit from our chat and you don't already subscribe to this show, why don't you click on the link in your podcast app? There's usually a follow button somewhere. They don't really call it subscribe anymore because you don't have to pay to subscribe, so to speak. But follow this show so we update you each time a new show comes out. Now, if like many people listening to this, you're wondering, what's the right thing to do at present? We're at the beginning of a new year. Well, we're into it now, aren't we? And there's all the mixed messages. Should you buy? Should you wait? You're wondering what interest rates are going to do, what's going to happen to property values. I don't know your specific circumstances, so I don't know what's right for you. But I do know moving forward, there are still going to be some great opportunities. You've heard me say before that this is going to be the year that the property market resets, and once the property market hits a bottom and stays there, we go into the stabilisation phase of the cycle, and it's the beginning of the next property cycle. But that doesn't mean property prices are going to boom. The boom's the last stage of the cycle. There's a stabilisation period and an upturn stage. So I propose you have a chat with my team at Metropole, who can provide you with time-tested, proven frameworks that I've fine-tuned over almost 5 decades. We've invested through times like this before. Now, I'm really proud of the team that won 3 awards over the last year, international awards, including Australia's most trusted property investment consultant company in 2022 and best property investment consultants in Australia in 2022. Now, part of the strategy we put together for our clients includes a value-add strategy, a manufacturing capital growth strategy, if it's appropriate for you, such as renovations that Greg and I were talking about, or property development, where you become an armchair developer and we manage the whole process for you from concept to completion. So if you're interested in property, be it investment or your own home, just go to metropole.com.au, organise an obligation-free complimentary clarity consultation, and we'll have a chat with you about what your options are.
Now here's Michael's mindset message. Remember, a change in your thinking will lead to a change in your life.
In my mindset message today, I want to remind you that success requires luck and luck requires work. Now, I must give credit to this chat I'm about to have with you to my good friend Tom Corley, who's the co-author of my book, Rich Habits, Poor Habits. And we were having a chat the other day and he reminded me of something he'd written about. You see, I believe the average person performs far below their abilities. They do what they have to do to survive, to get by. They avoid taking risks that could disrupt their lives. Most people are risk averse, aren't they? On the other hand, I've found, and Tom Corley found in his Rich Habits, Poor Habits study, that true success is the byproduct of unleashing your innate abilities, exposing them to the light of day for everyone to see. But this requires risk. And taking that risk is a leap of faith in yourself and your abilities. And the problem is, most people don't ever do it. On the other hand, unleashing your innate abilities is really nothing more than just pursuing something you enjoy, something that brings you joy while you're engaging in those activities. But here's the problem. Oftentimes, exploiting your own innate abilities requires an enormous investment of your time before the investment begins to pay dividends. And because the investment doesn't produce immediate rewards, for many people, it ends up being a problem. Developing your innate abilities by hours of work, hours of daily practice, combined with daily reading to gain insight into the knowledge to perfect your abilities, it just requires too much work for the average person. Now, you've heard me say it before, luck comes when preparation meets opportunity. When you devote yourself to something that you're passionate about, you're engaging in activities that tap into your innate abilities. And by developing those abilities, and that takes time and investment of time, but by developing those and engaging in them over and over again, you're eventually going to become an expert. Developing expertise takes time. Some would say 5, 10, 15 years at a minimum. Often it takes longer. And there's no short-term payback. So this investment in yourself tees you up for success later in life. I found opportunities eventually present themselves. If, however, you're not prepared when an opportunity comes your way, then the opportunity passes you by. But if you are prepared, if you've done the hard work for many years, if you're ready for it, when that opportunity does come along, you're going to be ready to pounce. Now, many people call this fortuitous alignment of preparation and opportunity luck. But those who prepare their entire lives, those who invest in their abilities their entire lives, they become the beneficiaries of luck, of meeting preparation and opportunity. Now, we all have special innate abilities. Mine isn't in sport or in mechanical things, but I found what I'm good at. You've got to find what your inborn strengths are, what's hardwired in your DNA. And it's probably there right from birth. Your job in life is to find out what you're good at and devote yourself to it for the rest of your life. What you're good at is usually something that comes easier for you than to others. That's life's way of winking at you. Your strengths are cues for you to find your inborn, natural abilities. Find your strengths, devote your life to improving them, and luck will follow. Luck, of course, is the precursor to success. You can't become successful without luck. But in order for luck to occur, you've got to relentlessly develop those abilities so they become natural to you. In other words, you've got to invest the time and energy in perfecting them. Find your strengths, develop those strengths, and luck will follow. And once again, I want to say thanks to Tom Corley for putting some of these words in my mind as we had a chat, and they're the sort of information that you're going to find in our regular Rich Habits, Poor Habits blogs on Property Update, and in my book, together with Tom, Rich Habits, Poor Habits, where we train you to start developing more of the habits of the wealthy, successful people and ditch some of your poor habits. Well, thanks for spending the last little while with me, and I hope you got some benefit from this show. If you did, and you know somebody else who'd also benefit, please tell them about the Michael Yardney podcast. There's a share button on every podcast app. On Apple Podcasts, there's 3 little buttons down the bottom. Press it and share it, or just tell them about the Michael Yardney podcast. I hope you're going to be doing them a favour, and you'll definitely be doing me a favour and helping me in my quest to make as many people as possible financially literate. Now, there's ways of catching up with me between these shows. Just look for Michael Yardney on social media, or why not join my private Facebook group? Go to Facebook and look for the Property Update Facebook group. And I have a way of saying thank you to you for subscribing to this podcast. Go to podcastbonus.com.au. There'll be a link in the show notes, podcastbonus.com.au, where you can get a bunch of ebooks and reports, my way of saying thank you. And when you've got time, why not listen to some of the old podcasts? There's individual lessons in each of those that I think would be helpful for you. I'll be back again real soon. In the meantime, have a great week. Make it a great week.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Michael Yardney podcast, which was brought to you by Metropole, who help their clients grow, protect, and pass on their wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. If you like what you heard and don't already subscribe, you'll find us on iTunes or on your favourite Android app as the Michael Yardney Podcast. Watch out for our next show, which comes to you twice a week, and you'll learn some new ideas about property investment, success, and money in around 30 minutes. To get more of Michael's thoughts, go across to www.propertyupdate.com.au and sign up for his daily morning briefing, and you'll hear from not only Michael but a group of leading property success and money experts. And just a reminder that the information you heard in this show today is general educational advice and not specific investment advice, as we don't know your personal circumstances. If you're looking for specific advice, why not ask the team at Metropole to help you?